Arsenal 3, Brentford 1. Happy New Year indeed. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is our Arsenal Raw Reaction show, joining you the morning after the night before. Arsenal winning in West London in a very impressive victory after, of course, going behind and turning the scoreline on its head in very, very convincing fashion. Good morning to you all joining us. Very much appreciate you all being here. Make sure you drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new around here with those notifications turned on so you never miss a show. Very much appreciate you all being here as usual. And I hope you had a fantastic New Year celebration with whatever you did. I tell you what, there was quite a few tired faces yesterday I saw around the club from the press box to the fans. It was there was a lot of tiredness, I think, from some late nights with the New Year having been seen in. I don't know about you, and I think I speak for a few people here, but I really have got to the point where I feel like I'm a 9 o'clock man now. I like being in bed at 9. That's what being 30 does, I think, now. I say that, I was doing it at 27. I like being in bed at 9 and having to stay up past midnight. It's just not me anymore. It's just not me anymore. So very happy to be back into the usual settings and awake with a spring in my step, especially considering Arsenal got the result that we all wanted them to get yesterday. But good morning to those joining us live in the chat box. Thank you so much for being here. Do drop a like on the video and subscribe if you're new. Shari, good morning to you. To Matt G, to Amira, Carlton, Rich, Temmie, Mark, Paul, Temmie again, James, Trader Mike, Knowledge, Blackshire, Damien, Josh, Gratley Poos. We've got Odarile, Glenn, Olawale as well. Thank you to you all. And more, of course, for tuning in also. Very much appreciated. Very much humbled to see you all here as usual. And if you could drop that like, it takes just a second. It costs you nothing. And if you're listening on catch up as well, thank you to all of you as well for catching up. I hope that the audio has been dropping at a more, urgent manner for you all to listen to as well. But keep poking me if indeed it doesn't pop up, but it should do. It should be coming up pretty quick as well. Right, let's jump into today's story. StreamYard's still not letting me use my PowerPoint slides, so we're on Google Slides at the moment. But that's fine because it works just the same. And actually, I can change slides, believe it or not, using the StreamYard bit as well. I don't have to actually go out of it, which is helpful. Anyway, we end the year with a win with Arsenal, as I say, 3-1. I say ending the year with a win. I don't know why I put ending the year with a win. We're starting the year with a win. I don't know why I put ending the year with a win. Starting the year with a win. That's I can't believe I did that. But it's I mean, if you want to end the year now, the calendar looks very good for Arsenal. Of course, the only team to have won a game in the entirety of 2025. Excellent stuff indeed. So yeah, really good, really good news. And of course, the lineup of the day was affected by the illness bug that was going around. And this was news that broke before. I say news that broke. I'll say it as it is. This was news that helped Brentford out and leaked hours ahead of kickoff. Explaining that indeed the team had been affected by illness that Mikel Arteta had, of course, addressed after the game. In fact, it was the first press conference I've been in since taking on the new role, and I didn't quite expect my question to be the one that would go viral after the match, but it was, as I did ask Mikel Arteta about how, if indeed it did at all, the leaking of the news that Arsenal's team had been affected by a bug affect preparations. Now, it certainly would have been something that would have aided Brentford more than affected Arsenal in terms of it coming out. But that in turn is also a frustration, to which he jokingly blamed Kate, the press officer. And he was joking. But when it comes to kind of the lineup, of course, Kai Havertz not available. He tells us that some of the players, of course, that are actually in the team were also affected and were not fully kind of even available, to be honest. Raya, Timber, Saliba, Gabriel, Calafiori was the back four and goalkeeper that I predicted and thought that would start. But Partey, Merino and Odegaard is a midfield combination we've not seen too often together. And it worked quite well. We'll talk more about those individuals later on. Ethan Nwaneri, though, I think was the big story of the day, starting on the right-hand side with Gabriel Jesus and Martinelli on the left as well. It was very much a positive to see this, and I think it lifted the mood before the game, seeing Nwaneri start, even though the likes of Kai wasn't available to play. We don't know who individually was affected by illness, and it's not something that Arteta would want to explain, nor that he would want anyone to know anyway before kickoff. But it was a performance that, if indeed you watched it with no knowledge of illness, you probably wouldn't have assumed that there was any, because it was still a very committed performance indeed. However, it did indeed take Arsenal to go down a goal before indeed they were able to get the result that they wanted. Now, this was the 6th time this league season that Arsenal have gone a goal down. And it's only the 2nd time in this league season that Arsenal have been able to turn that deficit into a victory. Arsenal had drawn 2, lost 2, and won just 1 after going behind in the season. In the league games of this season so far. But it was a question I also asked Mikel after the game about what he saw differently, kind of in response this time around compared to others. And he said, today we discussed about that option because it can happen and the game falls in their hands and they get exactly what they want. But we managed to change it around. The timing of it was really good. So we were lucky that we took advantage so early in the second half. And it was a different game. And I think that this is a really good sign at the start of 2025 that you can go a goal down, you can contain your composure, you can respond quickly. And of course, Arsenal did respond relatively quickly. It only took 10 to 15 minutes before they were back on a level playing field. And Gabriel Jesus, at this moment in time, cannot stop scoring. Really good shot from outside the box from Thomas Partey. That was then parried back by Mark Flecken, who, of course, was something of a doubt before the game. But Gabriel Jesus was quick off the mark to dive in and finish off the header. That's our last two of the last 3 league games where both Kai Havertz and Jesus have latched onto the rebounds from shots from other players in the team to finish off. And there is that real desire and motivation that we've seen, of course, from these players to kind of run in and get the goals. And again, this is now, I think, 6 goals in 3 games. There was some conversations in the press lounge afterwards about how before this, Jesus had, before his goal against Palace in the League Cup, he had 1 in 33 appearances. 1 in 33 appearances. You know, that is startling. And he's gone from that to 6 goals in 3 games. And I think it's exactly what tells you about confidence and what it does to players. Confidence in your players, opportunities being taken, and how it can lift that burden of, the burden of pressure off your shoulders. And that was really, really good. I'm acknowledging the chat. So I hated how on TV you could see that Jesus was bleeding from a collision he had, yet Brentford fans were calling him a cheat. That's just part of football, isn't it? You know, they're not privy to that information, and it's just the way it goes. But he responded really well with his performance overall and was really solid on the day. But of course, it took until the start of the second half, not long in the second half, before Arsenal had their first chance to take the lead, really. And Mikel Merino smashed in after another Gabriel Jesus opportunity to shoot was then deflected and kicked in. This wasn't a game where Arsenal's goals that they scored were like free-flowing, fluid football that was really, really well worked. It was through pure desire and tenacity and persistence that Arsenal got their goals. And if you look back through the last few seasons where Manchester City have won titles, you look at the number of goals Man City have scored from knockdowns and rebounds and shots being deflected and falling at the feet of somebody else. It's that pressure. It's the overwhelming peppering of the opposition box and goal that leads to loose balls and opportunities. And Mikel Merino there from a corner, as indeed I have said before that he would be very much a presence in the penalty area when he plays. And I tell you what, I was shocked by the discourse at half time. I was talking to Charles about it, and Charles let me know that there was quite Charles Watts. He said that there's a lot of complaints about Merino's performance in the first half, and we were a little bit confused. We thought he was having a good game. At least, you know, watching him in the flesh in the stadium, his movement was good, his progression was good. All the question marks that were surrounding him about, like, he doesn't do enough going forward, he doesn't push the ball forward. His running was excellent. His coverage of the field was really good. He was popping up in different areas of the field, supporting his attacking cast. And in the end, of course, managed to get a goal to for me at least, silence the haters. I really do think that the discourse surrounding Mikel Merino's performance is just kind of, it bears out from this predetermined view of him. I think it sucks that people have not got kind of this willingness of context surrounding his kind of his situation so far and what he's had to deal with since coming into the team in terms of the injury and how he's having to gradually get up to speed, and he hasn't got the regular game time to be able to respond to that. And he needs a big year, and he started it off in the perfect way with a goal and a solid performance. You know, not a brilliant performance, but a solid performance on the day. But Martinelli, of course, wrapped it up. No pun intended. He was, again, a player that in the first half I wanted to see more from. It still felt like he couldn't quite take the emphasis, take the initiative and take some shots at goal, but his movement was certainly better than I've seen in previous games, back on his more natural left-hand side. And a brilliant finish. Again, another opportunity, cross from the right-hand side, I think it was Nwaneri. The ball fell to Martinelli and then Bosch right into the bottom right-hand corner off the half volley. Fantastic finish. Again, hopefully one that will give him plenty of confidence in the future to get that result. This is a brilliant picture, by the way. If you're listening on audio platforms, if you haven't seen it yet, the picture of Martinelli celebrating with someone's launched an Arsenal scarf onto the field that he's picked up and wrapped around his neck. And it's just a great image. It's just a really, really, really good image. And he's kind of... I think this is the way forwards. I know that he did okay on the right, but I think, you know, when you've got players out, play the players in their best positions. If you need to bring in a player that's not playing out of kind of their comfort zone, don't sacrifice somebody else to play another good role before we then kind of see this change in the side. But let's look at some individual performances as well. Of course, I think we have to start with Ethan Nwaneri. I think he's the headline act of the game. A lot of people wanted to see him start this match. Again, he sparkled this time. You know, there's been some performances, I think, when he's not necessarily done loads after coming off the bench, but he was aggressive. He was confident. He pulled off a few little bits of trickery. He's obviously involved in the third goal with his cross. He was taking corners, which in this Arsenal team is a big responsibility to do because it's a huge part of Arsenal's threat. And of course, those corners from the right-hand side that leads to these opportunities. Again, I think he's done absolutely everything he could have done. You know, yes, it'd be lovely to see him score or to get a direct assist, but I think he did everything he needed to do. And I think this style of right-sided player, having somebody of low center of gravity, technical, that can cut inside, that's got a good shot on him, not afraid to shoot from range, that can deliver a good cross. I think that's the profile that you need from that right-hand side. And certainly I'm very happy to see that. Art de Roche in the press conference asked some really good questions actually about Nwaneri and kind of about the context, about talking previously about, you know, it having to be the right context for Nwaneri to play, and why was it now the right time? And he says, well, in that position, it wasn't because of the bug that he started. It was a decision I made because I thought he was the best player to play in the position to start the game, and because there was a story there with his debut here. He made his Premier League debut, and sometimes that feeling comes in and you feel it is the right one, and then who knows? And I like that Arteta kind of used that extra motivation that 2 years ago, Ethan Nwaneri at 15 years of age made his Premier League debut, became the youngest ever Premier League player. And that story and that narrative sometimes can be inspirational to players, can give you that extra motivation, can add a little bit of emotion to it. So I quite like how honest Arteta was about using that in the reason to start it. He was added, Art said again, you said it was kind of a gut feeling to give him his debut and you've not rushed it since then. How do you feel about his development now that he can start? And he said part of that development is patience, managing frustration, managing expectation, because you expect that everything is going to go so fast as previous things happens, and it's not the case. So now we're building him. He's already played a lot of games, a lot of minutes for us, the age that he's got, and he's at the age that he's got, and he fully deserves that. And I think, you know, while there's some frustration that Nwaneri hasn't got more minutes, and I think certainly with Ødegaard being out, there was an opportunity to maybe using him more. that patience and that caution is still going to benefit Nwaneri, despite the fact that I think a lot of us wanted to see more of him already by this point. Absolutely, I think that it's the right. It's showing, and he's being vindicated still in his approach to Nwaneri's kind of development and exposure to game time. He's definitely being, and no one's talking about Arteta not giving kids minutes anymore. No one's talking about that whatsoever. We don't have conversations now about debuts for kids because he's given debuts to players. He's promoted Miles Lewis-Skelly and Nwaneri to the first team. We're seeing stories about Max Dowman getting opportunities to train with the senior team, and it wouldn't be surprised to see him break into the senior level after already making his debut at under-21s. And by the way, Nwaneri and Lewis-Skelly did not play too many games at under-21 level before they broke into that senior setup. So just because you go quickly from the under-18s to the under-21s doesn't mean you're going to be sticking around in the under-21s for a big season. If you're good enough, you get opportunities, and certainly was very, very positive indeed. Without a doubt, the best player on the pitch, though, was Thomas Partey. He absolutely was the best player on the day and was a big reason why Arsenal got the victory and the result that they did. It was one of his best performances I've seen in an Arsenal shirt. The progression, the calmness on the ball, the way in which he took the ball away from opposition players and moved them into other spaces was really strong. And I think that obviously what we've seen from this Arsenal midfield at times with Partey there is that lack of mobility, but he counteracted that very well with, of course, the support he had from his defence. And also his way in which he kind of turns away from players so comfortably. The shot, of course, that led to the first goal and the subsequent kind of progression that we saw from him in the game was a huge part of why Arsenal won this match, and deservedly, I think, would earn that edging the man of the match award from another couple of players that we'll talk about shortly. Declan Rice, of course, was on the bench because of rotational and fitness needs. Mikel Arteta explained ahead of the game that he had suffered something of a little knock after the game against Ipswich. And so with so many games coming up, we've got the ability to use Rice and the opportunity to use Partey. And certainly was Partey justified his inclusion in this game after performing as well as he did. But he only edged it out for me over two other players because for me, this was a game where despite Arsenal scored 3 goals, Gabriel and Saliba, these two, they are just absolutely stunningly good. Stunningly good. What more can you say about William Saliba and Gabriel? Like, what more could you talk about them? We've run out of superlatives. We've run out of praising words. We've run out of things to describe them. They are so strong in what they do. And it's, MJ says normal, and I think that's a really good word. It's just normal. I was doing, obviously, part of my new role is I do the player ratings now after games for Football.London. So if you want to see kind of my thoughts always after full time, head over to the Football.London website and you can always read my player ratings at full time. And I gave both of these guys an 8. I gave Partey an 8 as well, but it was kind of an 8 point. I can't do 0.5s, but it would have been a 0.5. If indeed I could have done. But these two were, again, so solid. It's more about, it's the stuff that isn't kind of praised the most that impresses me the most. It's the passing and distribution and the calmness. It's not necessarily the brilliant defending that we see week in, week out as well. It's not that. It's just the consistency of their performances. And I remember when Gabriel first arrived at Arsenal, the first kind of 2 to even into his 3rd year at Arsenal, he was getting criticism from kind of people that, still criticize fans and other players and the manager, of course, now, who never learned their lesson after being proven wrong so many times before. But they were getting, like, Gabriel was getting criticism for like these like moments where obviously he'd have a little bit of he'd make a bit of a mistake. And, he's still at that point, we signed him as a 22, 23-year-old defender, and he's grown into this senior figure at the side now at 27 years of age. Still got 5, 6, maybe even 7 years as a top-level defender ahead of him. The centre halves can easily go into their early into even mid-30s in some cases at the top level. We've still got a long time to appreciate Gabriel as the player that we see him today, and he can even get better, which is exciting as well. both of them are just stunningly good, aren't they? And they just continue to be so good for us. And I think Mikel Arteta ultimately got it spot on with the team selection, with the approach, with kind of how we dominated the game again. Yes, it was frustrating what we conceded, and Calafiori, I think, came back into this side and needed to get minutes, but you can see he's a player that's coming back from injury. Jurriën Timber getting a yellow card is a frustration because it means he does miss the game against Brighton through suspension, and now we've got a question mark about who goes at right back. Of course, you'd imagine that Declan Rice would be back, so we can play we can play Thomas Partey, of course, at right back. I know it's not a player that people want to see play right back, but we are very limited in those opportunities. And let's be honest, Thomas Partey did start against Luis Diaz in the game against Liverpool and was very, very good in that game at right back. So it's not like he cannot play the position, but I know it's not ideal, nor is it something we want to see. When you don't have Tomiyasu and Ben White available, unfortunately, that's just something that we might have to be open to, at least on this stage, because there's no information at the moment on either of Tomiyasu or Ben White's potential return. We don't know when or if they're going to be back in the coming months yet. There's still a long way to go, I think, potentially with those two after the injuries they have continued to suffer. There are other options, I guess. You could put Calafiori on the right-hand side and Miles Lewis-Skelly on the left. You could move to a back three, although I don't think that's what we would do. I think it's almost a guarantee that Partey will indeed be at right back against Brighton. The Declan Rice will move to that number 6 position. AMT, thank you for the kind donation, says, how about Calafiori? And again, yes, I've mentioned it's probably an option, but I'd be very surprised if that's what we saw. I mean, Calafiori was suspect a little bit. It grew into the game, yes, but defensively, I think overall he's a good defender, but he's still coming back from injury, and I'd probably end up trusting Thomas Partey more playing that right back role than I would Calafiori, especially when you've got a player as good as Declan Rice to come into that number 6 position, which is always good. And Partey can move into the midfield, and if you start Calafiori at left back in that game, or even Miles Lewis-Skelly, of course, but you could play with Saliba, Gabriel, Calafiori is kind of a back 3, and Partey moving into an auxiliary midfielder role. So I don't think that necessarily is the worst option in the world. I think when you've got Partey at right back, but you don't have Calafiori, it does mess with the system. It messes with the balance a bit more. And speaking of balance, by the way, there were some stats that came out after the game, of course, that Arsenal were very balanced in the way in which they attacked Brentford yesterday. You looked at kind of the percentages of Arsenal players. It was 38% on the right, 34% on the left, and 28% through the middle. It was very balanced in how Arsenal attacked Brentford, and I think that showed in the game. Right, we're going to go to part 2 now for your comments, your questions, your thoughts on the game, and anything you've got to add to what we've already discussed right after this. Okay, this is indeed part 2 of the show where we can go into the tackle. We can go into the tackle and try and tackle some of these thoughts and questions of yours. And we're going to go into the chat box to do that, of course, to see what you guys say. If you use a capital Q in the chat, it does, of course, help your questions. And please make sure their questions stand out so we can talk about it, and plenty more as well. And again, I just want to say a quick thank you for all the very kind messages that you've continued to leave on the channel. It is very humbling, and I'm glad that you always continue to enjoy the content here. And be aware, of course, that tomorrow there won't be a usual 8 a.m. show. I'm going to try and pre-record something for you a little bit later on, which will go out tomorrow morning. But there is a press conference very early on, which means in this new role and position, when these press conferences very early on in the morning roll around, I need to be there. So there won't be a normal 8 a.m. show, but I'm going to try and get you some content pre-recorded to go out tomorrow morning. So there will still be an 8 a.m. show. I'll probably be joined by a guest or two to have a chat about how things are right now and what we should do ahead of the game as well against Brighton. So, and the transfer window. We need to talk about transfers today as well, because the transfer window is now officially open, believe it or not. It's the first kind of morning show we've done since yesterday where we can talk about transfers. There's rumors flying about like mad, but it's going to be interesting to see what Arsenal ultimately do. From my view, I don't care if Nwaneri is doing really well on the right. I think it's no excuse for Arsenal still not to bring in a forward. We absolutely still have to go out and sign a player. Arasuka says, "Oh no, the trials for chief journalists having to go to press." Look, I haven't got anything to say to that. Dennis says Odegaard needs to get his head straight quickly. We need him in a January run more than any other player. He, other than Calafiori, Odegaard got my lowest score in the game yesterday. It was a very quiet game for Odegaard. I thought it wasn't quite clicking, for Odegaard yesterday. Was trying to force a couple of passes. It just didn't quite seem there. Yes, he's got to learn kind of the new partnerships with Nwaneri, I suppose, but I don't know. There was something a bit lacking from Odegaard yesterday. And, I'm his biggest fan. But I'm not afraid to say when I think he's not had a great game. And I didn't think he had a great game yesterday. He needs to find a goal from outside, not from outside the box, but from outside of a set piece. He needs to find a goal from open play. Ashley says, Odegaard form a concern. Say to myself, he is most technical. And then all of his shots are wayward and tamed. Most quick-footed player, but doesn't necessarily drive into the box to win free kicks and penalties. I mean, think about the goal that he nearly scored at Ipswich. There he did drive into the box. Had a really good shot that was saved by Muric, of course. So we know that only in the last game before Brentford, it is something that he can and does do. But yeah, there is a little thing there at the moment with Odegaard, and I think he just needs to rediscover his form. We don't really have the depth at the moment to rotate him out, though, is the frustrating thing. Alex says, how do we sometimes come out at halftime and kick on like we did against Brentford, and at other times we come out like wet noodles? Is this Arteta not getting his players in the right headspace? It is frustrating when you see a team come out like they did against Brentford. What I would say is, of course, the goal really does help. And it wasn't like it was a goal created from a magical piece of play. We got a corner and took away the chance when it fell to our feet. And then subsequently built on that with another goal that was taken from, a low XG chance from Martinelli that smashed into the bottom right-hand corner on the half volley. So there's obviously circumstances and situation that provide context to how Arsenal began the second half, and there's some fortune attached to that. But of course, the way in which we approached the second half was more aggressive. Even after we scored those goals, we didn't sit back and kind of were happy with our lead. Yes, there were periods of pressure from Brentford, as you would expect in any game, but we really did press. I loved the long balls from Raya. I've not even really talked about David Raya actually so far in the game, but he did have that mistake from that Lewis Potter shot. That he did very well to recover and claw the ball out. He, of course, then after that, I thought, had a very solid performance. Some of his distribution to Martinelli was excellent. It's like having a quarterback in goal sometimes. His throw is so impressive. The throw he put through to Martinelli through the middle of the pitch, slightly to the right-hand side. I've never quite seen a throw as impressive as that. It went so far that eventually it was a little bit overhit. And Flecken was able to come and get the ball with a diving header before Martinelli could reach it. But goodness gracious me. It's, it was an incredible throw from Raya. Darbo says, do we have a time frame for White's return? I don't seem to hear timelines for injuries these days, which I guess means no leaks except during illnesses. Not at the moment. Maybe something we'll hear from Mikel tomorrow. NSW says, Tom, why do we seem to pass the ball around the wings more instead of playing through the middle directly at goal? And what can we do to be more direct in games where teams sit back and defend? This is actually quite a simple one. The reason why Arsenal don't necessarily do more through the middle is because that is where the majority of the defenders are, the majority of the midfielders are. It's where it's the trickiest part of the field to progress the ball in, and it's more likely you're going to see more turnovers. And also, if you lose the ball in the middle of the field, it is much more dangerous to you on the counter. So Arsenal and teams in general tend to attack down the flanks. It's why you see it a lot more than you do through the middle. Sometimes you get opportunities on the break, and typically when you do see teams counter-attack, it is through the middle of the field that those counter-attacks do emerge. And that's why teams kind of stray away from attacking too often through the middle, because you often find yourselves in quite a vulnerable situation. I think that we're fine doing what we're doing. I think Odegaard's form has probably dipped and impacted that in some ways. And when Odegaard does return to the game that we know that he has, I think we'll be fine. But I know what you're saying, but there is reasons why we tend to skew back to those wing positions in terms of our attacks. And says, Tom, Ethan had a stellar game yesterday, but we need a wide forward still. Do you think having responsibility of being a dad is weighing on Odegaard? No, I don't. I think that's reading way too much into it. But I've already mentioned that I think, we need a forward, and we still don't have any excuses when it comes to adding somebody in during this window. Joe says, has Partey done enough to earn a new contract, an extension this January? I'm still very much not of the mind regarding the renewal at the moment. I agree with the frame of kind of we need to give contracts to players for what they're going to do rather than what they've done. And of course, with Partey being the age that he is and on the wage that he is, and the injury record that we know, we can't be ever not fearful of it, rearing its head. I am reluctant still at the moment to commit to that, but maybe that will change come the end of the season. But at the moment, I'm not quite there. We've had so many times where we've given contracts to players who are, in and around the starting 11 at that age bracket, and it's really come back to hurt us. Be that Ozil, be that Lacazette, sorry, be that Ozil, be that Aubameyang. There's always been these things that have made me fear giving kind of contract renewals to those players. Libak says, Tommy Boy, I was pretty impressed with the Arsenal this morning. They showed that they are improved with regards to dealing with low blocks as well. Matt says, I'll be supporting Man United on Sunday. Maybe if there's any signs of complacency from Liverpool, Man United might just capitalise. We can dream, mate. We can certainly dream. Rohit says, I like when Nwaneri was driving into the box, and that only happens when we pass the ball forwards quickly. Darba says, Odegaard has had a couple of bad tackles on his ankle, which might just be pressuring him to avoid contact. Once his confidence comes back about again, I'm sure it will improve his final ball. Darba says, how good is it criticising Raya for a mistake that he didn't even lead to a goal? Much preferred situation than some other big teams around. It's a very rare mistake from Raya at the moment, and again, he definitely kind of, changed it and kind of, what's the word, made up for it with the way in which he not only saved that moment, but then proceeded to have a very good game and solid game after that. It's a very rare mistake from Raya, and for me, he remains the best goalkeeper in the league right now. And it says, Tom, after seeing Mbuemo, would you still take him? He was a bit underwhelming in the second half. Arsenal dominated possession, Anthony, to be honest. Arsenal, it wasn't really the game. Of course, I'd still take Mbuemo. I think he's an excellent option for Arsenal. I'm not necessarily sure that he is realistic as an option. I just can't see Brentford selling him for anything less than a huge sum of money. Lloyd says, Tom, how was the first game of the new year as the chief correspondent? Squad depth up front is our biggest issue. This team needs to invest in the window if we're going to win the league. Yeah, it was good. It was busy. It was hectic doing a blog and player ratings and setting up the presser blog and then running the presser blog and doing the every word. And then the morning line as well. It was hectic, but it was enjoyable. It was a chaos on the trains, though. I was sitting on a train on the way up to the GTEC, and you're in one of those kind of trains that stops at a billion stations, and it was running behind already. And then all of a sudden it comes over the Tannoy. We're going to be running fast all the way through to Elephant and Castle, skipping the stop that I need to get off at to change trains to get over to Brentford. So that was stress. That was a lot of stress, but it worked out. And there was a moment where I had to get off at Bromley and then move over to another train that got to Denmark Hill. And then I had to get off a train that arrived at 15:06 and get on a train that was leaving at 15:07. And my missus is texting me saying, it's going to be fine. The train you're getting is actually running 2 minutes behind. But when I checked the app, it had then caught up and was running on time. And as we were pulling into Denmark Hill Station, the train I had to get on began to overtake us, as it was going into that station. So I had to get from platform 3 to platform 1, running up these stairs, across the platform, down, and I ran into the doors as they closed and just made it. And then leaving the stadium, because obviously I'm doing the press conference, so I'm there a little bit longer than I would be usually. As I was leaving the stadium, checked the app, checked when the train was. It was about quarter to 9, I think, at the time. It was 8:45, and I checked the train, and it was 8:46 that it was coming. And the station, if for anyone knows where Kew Bridge is outside the GTEC, it's literally like right outside the stadium. Is the stadium, so it's like you're not going to be in any kind of a long walk to get there. Like necessarily, the Emirates is a bit of a longer walk, but as I'm going across the bridge, you see the train pulling in and running down, and when you've run downstairs really quickly. And you realize that if you don't jump, you're going to go flat on your face. You're going too fast down a set of stairs where your momentum at the top half of your body starts to move faster than the momentum at the bottom of your body. So you have to kind of leap the last few stairs. Well, the issue for me was it was a few stairs. It was about 8 stairs. And I landed very hard on my left ankle. So my New Year's resolution of trying to do more running this year, I'm already trying to sabotage it, clearly, by injuring myself. But and then the irony is you land at the bottom of the stairs, smash down. All of the people standing at the station turn around and look at you like, what the hell is this guy doing? And of course, when the train arrives, the doors don't open for 20 odd seconds. And you're standing there thinking, right, well, I didn't need to injure myself running so quickly and embarrass myself. And but you know, life moves on. We all got there where we needed to go in the end. Andy says, great performance considering we don't know yet how many of those players who played also suffered from the illness bug that went through some of the team before the game. Absolutely. It's one of those things where, like, if you don't win the game, where that would definitely be something that we'd be talking about. You know, the fact that we had to deal with this, a really bad time bug. We've had players missing, players not at full fitness. But do we ever talk about enough when these things happen, how impressive it is that we cope with them and come out with a really good performance anyway? Joe says, I'm from Bromley and the joys of a 1-minute Denmark Hill train switch, indeed. It's one of those where, like, the apps never tell you that there's a train leaving 1 minute after you arrive because they just assume you can't make it. You can make it. You just need a little bit of luck and good footing, and the new Christmas present of some new trainers was certainly helped me on the day. Addicted says, standard London train shenanigans made both trains like a legend. Thank you, mate. Dennis says, I think Arsenal should be looking at Baleba as a Partey replacement. Yeah, I talked about this in an article I wrote the other day, actually. I think Baleba would be a very good option for Arsenal potentially to look to if they are to move on from Partey in the summer. Tyler says, I think our main problem is when Saka doesn't play, that we're lacking players who are attacking their fullbacks. Too many backward balls, which is slowing our attack and letting the opposition get into defensive positions. There is definitely a lack of urgency at times when we counter. There's a lack of speed. We really do need somebody on top of Martinelli who is a proper speedster. I'd love to see Arsenal, when they sign a wide player, go out and get someone with some real pace about them. I'd love to see that coming. I think that's definitely what we need during this window. But of course, it's then finding who that player is. Brentford are really good at kind of the little kind of flick round the corner passes to hit you on the counter as well. They're probably the best in the league at it. It's kind of it's things that have hurt us against Brentford in the past. And Mbuemo's excellent at kind of latching onto those, and he's got good speed about himself as well. So certainly, yeah. Critical Thinker says, I think Miles Lewis-Skelly is our best option at left back at the moment. I mean, based upon the last recent performances, can you disagree with that statement? I think it'd be very hard pressed to disagree with that. Kwame says, Tom, did you read the rumours that Arsenal are interested in Dusan Vlahovic? The silly season is very much upon us, Kwame. So do take everything with a little bit of salt. But I've not heard anything regarding Vlahovic at the moment right now, nor have I heard anything about a striker in January. It's certainly the emphasis that I'm hearing is on a wide player that they're keen on. Antonio says, Tom, every time Merino plays, I don't notice him on the pitch. But I still would say that he was decent against Brentford. I think that's really strange. And maybe that's why people had such criticisms. I was watching him because, you know, in the ground, you have the benefit of being able to watch what you want to watch rather than just where the camera's pointing. And so I was making more of an effort, despite kind of doing the blog and the writing up the ratings at the same time. I was trying to watch Merino as much as I could. And I was impressed with his movement and his coverage and where he was popping up and where he was supporting play. I think he did really, really well. So I don't quite get the kind of the criticisms that he was getting. Akin Toby says, Tomiyasu has been out for virtually the whole season with no definite return date, which has affected the whole team. Partey has had to deputise for Timber. What should we do? I think, you know, in the summer, even maybe in January, we need to be looking at bringing in another versatile defender. I know people laugh at that because all we do is sign defenders. But the reality is we need to replace players like Tomiyasu, and you can't rely on them. And Calafiori's not exactly been the most fit since coming in. Ben White has been out for a long time as well. That has been a huge blow. I think the Ben White injury is massively overlooked as an injury. Massively overlooked as an injury. So, yeah, I think that's something that we need to think about. Z says, Tom, do you think Havertz is no longer a regular starter? Can Nwaneri take his spot? No, I think Havertz will come back in very quickly. I don't think that's going to be something that we see fall out of the team at all. Mike says, reading again a lot about Nico Williams for this January. What do you think? I think that, again, he's not had the best of seasons. Maybe it's because he stayed at Athletic Club. Maybe if indeed he got a move to another team, he would benefit greatly from that. But he's not had the best of campaigns for Athletic. But maybe indeed a switch could release him again. We know the talent that he's got, and he's still very young still as well. So time is indeed on his side. Further to Tom, I was reading an article from last year that Liverpool covered the pitch the quickest in the league, in contrast to City and Arsenal, who are ranked in the bottom 5 when it came to quickness as an overall team. And that's because they're different styles of sides. Arsenal and City under Pep and Arteta are all about control, all about patience, all about build up and the perfect pass. That's Arsenal and City's style. That's what they like. They like dominance, they like control, they like security. Whereas Liverpool are a lot more entertaining because they play a lot more kind of gung-ho, throw caution to the wind type football. That's just the way that Liverpool ultimately play. And that means, of course, that they score more goals, usually, but it usually means that they concede more. Now, they've conceded, ironically, the same number of goals, of course, as Arsenal have this season. We both conceded 17 goals, and actually both teams currently have the best defences in the league. But I think that the difference is, obviously, this year is that Liverpool's goals that they've conceded have kind of come in bursts. So they've conceded kind of goals in games like you think about the 3 goals that they conceded against Newcastle, for instance. Arsenal, as just a point of reference, last year didn't concede more than 2 goals in any game whatsoever. But of course, they conceded 3 to Tottenham, 3 to Newcastle, 2 to Fulham. They conceded 2 to Southampton in the league, bottom of the table. They conceded 2 against us earlier on in the campaign as well. But they got a lot of clean sheets this season, which has obviously offset that. So when they do concede, they tend to concede 1, 2, or 3, or rather 2 and 3 in games, not just 1. They tend to concede the 2 or 3 goals. Whereas Arsenal, when they concede, they keep it quite limited. But the biggest issue that Arsenal have had when it comes to conceding is actually when they concede first. It's about turning the scoreline around. As I mentioned earlier in part 1, this is only the second time in 6 that Arsenal have conceded first in the league this season and come back to win. We've come back to draw 2. We've lost the other 2. And of course, we've come back to win twice now. The other time that we went behind so far this season was against Southampton at home. You may remember we went down to, I think it was Archer scored, gave Southampton the lead, and then we came back to win that game 3-1. Same scoreline as we saw, of course, yesterday. So that, I think, is something that Arsenal need to be better at. And obviously, it's encouraging that we managed to do that yesterday. And that's why I asked Arteta about it, because I think it is an element of our game that we need to be better at, is if we do concede first, and it was only 1 shot. Brentford only had that 1 shot right at the start of the game that led to their goal. And Arsenal don't concede too many. And when you are conceding on the very few shots that they get, they had 2 shots on target all game, 5 in total. We really limited them to the amount of shots that they had. The other shot they had on target as well nearly went in, Raya, with the mistake from Lewis Potter's strike. But it's something that we need to get better at. AA says, is it true that Timber's out against Brighton? Yes, it is. He is suspended. William says, United have been linked with Gyökeres in January. Do you think this could be once again an example of us not willing to go big at the right time and missing out on another forward talent? I mean, sure. I just don't know if I don't think Arsenal have 100 million euros. By the way, Man United have to sell before they can even think about going big on a player. They just don't have that PSR freedom. There's a lot of, you probably saw the reports yesterday, the reports that Casemiro, Eriksen, these players are going to have to be moved on before they can think about signing another player. And I mean, if we're really looking at Man United in terms of signings, are you going to get jealous over Man United's business in the market? Because goodness me, if the day comes where I'm getting jealous at the deals that Man United are doing after what they've done with players, I think we'll be in a lot worse position than second in the table. Michael says, Tom, upsetting the apple cart is my worry this time of year. What is so bad about our squad? Mikel rather is quite clear when mentioned the calendar year. Please have a look. We have been great. No, we have been great, Michael. Look, and it's not about upsetting the apple cart. Making a signing is not going to upset the apple cart if you bring in the right player. And if it's one thing that we look at with Arsenal and transfers is that we've got a very good record, not perfect, but a very good record when it comes to signing the right players. And so for that reason, I don't think we have to be apprehensive about doing business. I think we should be encouraged to do business during this January window. And there isn't, as I've mentioned before, and I'll say it again, and I'll say it again and again and again and again. I don't think we've got any excuses when it comes to business this winter. I really, really don't. I don't think we've got any excuses at all. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at on that front. Anyway, thank you so much to all of you for tuning in once again. As I mentioned in the part one, tomorrow morning show will be a pre-record. It will not be the usual live, but there will be a live chat box, so you'll still be able to engage and talk to your fellow TGT listeners in the chat box and respond to some of the things that we're talking about. But it will be a pre-recorded show because I will be at the Arsenal press conference tomorrow morning. So just be aware of that. Of course, the game is on Saturday. Arsenal taking their game to Brighton. 5:30 kickoff on the South Coast. I'll be driving down for that one. So very much looking forward to that. But there'll be a preview included in the Saturday 8 a.m. show. So make sure you look out for that one. I do enjoy a drive down to Brighton. Being a South boy myself, I do enjoy it. It's a nice drive down to Brighton usually. And now I've moved, it's much easier as well, actually. To get down there and living just off the M25. But hopefully it'll be very chill and easy to get down to and not too much in the way of traffic as well. But thank you so much, as always, for you tuning in. You are all very much appreciated. Very much thank you for the kind words as per. I also want to say I made a mistake actually yesterday. And I completely forgot about the whole 1K like challenge. You may remember that last year we managed to go a good 6 months on every show, getting 1,000 likes. Now, I'd quite like to see if we can do that again this year and see how many shows in a row we can get 1,000 likes. So on yesterday's show, we're currently sitting at 945 likes. So I think we can still retrieve this and we can kick off again 2025 with a 1K like challenge. I think we can do it. Right? I think it's possible. I won't say pre-recorded shows is going to be tricky, but who knows? If you're energetic enough in the chat box with the calls for likes, maybe we can do it in tomorrow's pre-recorded show. I will certainly remind you. Currently watching, there's over 1,000 of you on YouTube and over 200 of you on Twitter watching. If you're listening on Twitter, please make sure you tune into us on YouTube. You can engage in the chat box. You can find, trust me, it's amazing some of the friendships that have been built just through watching this channel. I met some people who'd flown over from Chicago yesterday, actually, after the game. So I waved to those guys. Very nice to meet them that watch the channel as well. So yeah, if you can drop a like, let's see if we can kick off a 1K like challenge again in 2025. So if you've not yet liked yesterday's show, head over there. We only need 55 likes to get up to that 1K. Make sure you drop a like on today's show, and we'll see if we can kick off the new year by doing as many 1K likes on these videos as we did last year. So thank you for your support. Really do appreciate it. And yeah, and actually there's one more thing I want to discuss as well with you. I don't know. I've tried to wrap this show up 3 times now. There's been a couple of comments and I know that you tell me I shouldn't listen to them. Okay. I'm gonna. I want to address a point that's come across. A couple of people have tweeted me it. A couple of people left comments saying that the new role that I've got somehow in their minds seems to make them think now I cannot be critical of Arsenal. I want to stress I'm at the same company doing a very similar job to what I was doing before, just with more responsibilities. And it's my job to hold the club accountable, to be critical, to question things that need to be questioned. There's nothing stopping me from doing that. There's no pressure to not say or not criticize certain things. So please, please understand that point of view is very much wrong. And that I am very, very well within my rights to say and do as as is reasonable. Because obviously, I'm not going to do what some people do and abuse, and we never have done that. But you will not see a change in my approach to this role, to the way I talk about Arsenal, to the way I criticise Arsenal, to the way I praise Arsenal. There will be no change. There will be a consistent thread in how I approach all of this, because that's how we've got to here. So that's what we're going to continue to do. But I just wanted to preface that, because I've seen a few comments made like that. And I know it is inevitable. I know everyone gets haters, but I wanted to preface that just at the end of the show. And I thank you as well to Joe for becoming a brand new member, or continuing at least his membership with the channel as well. Thank you, Joe, and joining our TGT family. Right, have a fantastic Thursday. It's a really good day of the week as usual. It's a day off for me, so I'm going to go and enjoy that. And make sure you tune in tomorrow morning for our pre-recorded 8 a.m. show, probably a transfer special. So that'll be good. Thank you for listening. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy and respectful. And as always, up the Arsenal.